Hello and welcome back to another Train Effective podcast. This week we are joined by a very special guest because today we have on Isiah Reid. Isiah, thank you so much for coming on today. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. For those guys who may not know, Isaiah has recently signed up with MLS side Houston Dynamo. So today we're really gonna try and get into the nitty-gritty of his journey, of his path to get into where he is today. And hopefully that will serve some really nice insights for you guys and a bit of motivation to hear how he got to where he is today. So Isaiah, if it's okay, I want to start right from the very beginning. So tell me about where you were born, where you were raised and some of your earliest soccer memories.
Yeah, so I'm from Rock Hill, South Carolina originally, and I started playing football when I was 2 years old. Pretty young, but my older brother, Josh, he's the reason why I started playing. Ever since I was a little kid, I always looked up to him. He was a huge role model for me. And so when I was 2, he was 7. And so that's when he was playing a little bit more competitively. And so I wanted to be just like him. And so I started so young. And then when I was 6 years old, that's when I started playing for a club competitively at Discovery Soccer Club. And that's kind of where everything took off. Like I said before, I wanted to be like my brother. Other sports just didn't really interest me. And when I would see him play games, I want to be just like him. And so that's kind of how I started. I was at Discovery Soccer Club from age 6 to age 14. And in that time, when I was 11 years old, I got invited to go and train with Manchester City's Youth Academy in 2012. It was an amazing experience. So I trained with them. Then I came back to the States to play for Discoveries until I was 14. And then when I was 14, I moved to Charlotte Soccer Academy to play in their developmental academy program. And the developmental academy program, it's kind of similar to what it's like in England in terms of like the Premier League. We have all the top academies in America all playing against each other. It's really good for getting scouted by national team scouts, D1 scouts, you name it. And after that, I ended up going to a Clemson ID camp, and I played really well. I ended up going on a visit, and I committed to Clemson my sophomore year of high school. After that, I kept playing at Charlotte Soccer Academy. I got one U16 U.S. national team call up. Nothing really came out of it, but I was definitely grateful for the opportunity. And then I ended up going to Clemson for 4 years. Played well there, especially my junior year, and then I graduated and just got drafted to Houston Dynamo. So now I'm here in Houston.
Well, shout out to your brother Josh for motivating and kickstarting this career that you're on now. So going back to the beginning part, then what was it? Firstly, maybe from your brother or even from you, in a country where perhaps soccer isn't the most popular because you got basketball, you got American football, you got baseball, upon lots and lots of other sports. What was it for your brother? Or what was it for you, which interested you about soccer, and why was that the sport that you were keen to pursue?
Yeah, so it's actually pretty funny. My parents got my brother into the game because he just wasn't good at basketball, football, baseball, none of that. And so they're like, let's try out soccer. And he ended up being good at it. And so for me, like I said before, I wanted to be like him, but it was also very tough. Like you said before, soccer, especially the time that I was growing up, was not popular at all in America or popular in my area as well, in South Carolina. And I remember, like I said, I joined my club when I was 6 years old, but they actually didn't have an age group for my team. So I had to play on the U9 team when I first started when I was 6 years old because the club only had like 12 teams at the time. And so like soccer in general and just the area wasn't as big as it is now. It's grown so much, but it definitely was tough. And I tried out, basketball, baseball, and other things like that, but just the feeling of soccer, football just really interested me. And I remember my brother, he was a huge Manchester United fan. So we would get up in the morning, we would watch, Cristiano Ronaldo play and things like that. So I just found so much joy in the game.
Nice, nice. And so you kind of touched on it there, but so for example, in your area, was it ever a case where you could go to the closest park and or even at school and with your peers and you could just have the opportunity to play soccer for fun because everyone else was playing. Was that opportunity ever there, or was it just more of a case of everyone was playing basketball, so you had to, the only place you could play soccer was at the organized events like your clubs, etc.?
Yeah, it was extremely tough because there weren't that many, soccer pitches in general in my area. So for a while, the only time that I was able to play was at organized practice, and it was extremely tough. All the fields were locked up. Um, if you wanted to go on a field, they'd be like, "No, this is for football, for the American football players or for baseball." And it's like you couldn't even get on a field and enjoy it. So for my childhood, most of the time that I played for fun and get my touches in, we played backyard. We played in the backyard with our neighbors, and we'd invite our friends over and play in our backyard because that's all we could do. And then when I got to elementary school, in third grade, we had a big field at recess, and so I brought my own cones, my own soccer ball, and I started getting kids in my elementary school into the game. And I even hosted a soccer tournament at my elementary school just to try and share the game with others. And ended up having like trophies and all this stuff. It got into the newspaper, but yeah, I tried to share the game with others. But in terms of for myself, it was extremely hard because most of the fields were reserved and we couldn't really get on anything.
Bro, that's amazing to hear. The fact that you say, okay, soccer's not here, so I'm gonna bring soccer to the people. I'm gonna make it happen. I love that. So then you mentioned about making it into the Charlotte Soccer Academy. How old were you when you got into that? And what was the process for you to get into that? Was there trials? Did you get scouted? How did that work?
Yeah, so I was 14 when I got into the Charlotte Soccer Academy, and it was a trial. It was pretty intense because all the best players in the whole Charlotte area. Charlotte's a pretty big city, so every top player in that area was coming to trial for their academy team because at the time that's when academy was really starting to hit its peak, and that was like the new thing for American soccer. The developmental academy. So everyone was going to the tryout. It was very intense environment, and I tried for the team and I made it. So it's definitely a great moment.
Nice. And so throughout that period of time, how pivotal would you say, especially like you said, the trials was quite tough. Like you said, at the time it was getting really popular. How important was the sort of support of your brother and your parents throughout those early foundation years and sort of early teenage years of you going into soccer?
I think it was huge. Just in terms of building my mental toughness, I think that's something that my dad really worked on a ton with me, especially at my boyhood club. Dealing with different adversity and things like that. So when I did get in tough scenarios and circumstances like going on trial and having to deal with certain things, I was ready for it. And then in terms of my mom as well, the amount of support that she gave me is incredible. And then for my brother as well, every summer he would train me in the backyard, like I said before, just train my technique as much as possible to help me grow as a player. So I definitely want to thank him as well. And I also had another coach in the summer, Zeljko Zvikovic. He was a Croatian guy who I played a lot of 3v3 with. That's very popular in American soccer in the early stages, playing 3v3 and futsal and things like that. And so I had him train me as well. That prepared me.
Well, shout out to the family and shout out to the coach. It sounds like you had a really nice and supportive system around you, which I'm sure was really helpful for you. And then so yeah, talk me through the actual experience at Charlotte. How important was that for your development? How many years were you there? And yeah, just talk me through that journey.
I think being at Charlotte was so important because it helped me to really develop my game more so from the tactical side. And like a lot of people say, like your years, between 6 and honestly 13, it's about the development and things like that. And once you hit 14, it's about learning how to win, developing tactics and other things like that. And I really think that Charlotte really helped to accelerate my growth as a player, and find different nuances in my game for me to develop. A big case in point has been helping me in my versatility. I came into Charlotte Soccer Academy as a left winger in camp, and they said that if I wanted to get into a U.S. national team camp, I need to switch to a left back. So I remember I ended up switching to left back my second season at Charlotte, and I ended up playing left back pretty much my whole time there, switching with left winger. So just showing me different sides of the game, different positions, while helping me improve my technique as well. They definitely helped me to accelerate my growth.
And would you say that sort of at Charlotte was the first, not the first time, but where the amount of soccer practice and soccer drills in specifically, was there an increased amount from where you were at your local club in comparison to when you went into the academy? Was that a big difference in terms of practice and drills?
Yeah, I think it was a big jump, more so to the fact, like you said, like with the drills and the training, just the level of intensity. You know, when you join an academy, it's like every single player is there to win, to play, and the level of intensity, the quality of play, the types of drills that we're doing is more advanced. Like I said before, there's a bigger focus on the tactics and the tactical side of the game. So everything was just kind of at a higher level, and that forced me to play at a higher level as well.
Right. And why do you think it was that, the coaches have said to you, right, oh wait, I don't know if I've lost you there. No, you're back. Um, you came in, like you said, as a left winger. So why do you think it was that the coaches said, if you really want to advance, if you really want to get far, you have to go into the left back position? Why do you think that was?
I think that has to do mainly with the certain qualities of my game that they saw. And to be honest, at the time, I'm going to be completely honest, I probably wasn't good enough, as a winger compared to a lot of the other American talent. I just wasn't, in terms of the best wingers in the United States, I wasn't up there. And so they're like, but you're a great player. You can get hold possession of the ball. You have a great first touch. You have a really good left foot. Let's try you at left back. We'll teach you how to 1v1 defend. We'll teach you positioning and stuff. You're a great player, but you're just not the top level of winger in America. So if we move you back to a position that's higher in demand, a left-footed left back, then you're going to have a way better chance of getting into that camp. And so for me, like I said before, my dad teaching me things like humility and, dealing with adversity and just having the humility to realize that I might not be where I need to be yet, but I know I can get there. And if I stay coachable and, listening to the feedback they give me, I can develop easier that way. So that's kind of how I took it.
And so do you think that was like your response straight away, or was there at first, obviously you're a little bit younger than as well, maybe the understanding isn't the same. Was it tough to hear that at first? The coach is saying, I know you want to play left wing, but actually we don't necessarily think you're good enough yet. How did you take that?
I'm gonna be honest. I remember when the first time they said that, it was like one of the first or second national team camps of that year. And I remember the national team scout was at the very first game of the season, and I was playing decently. And I remember we got a PK, and I was the youngest player on the team. It was the 2001 and 2000 age group, and we get a PK to tie the game. And the coach was like, Isiah, take the PK. And I'm like, okay. And I end up hitting the crossbar with a PK in front of the U.S. national team scout. Absolutely just ruined the moment. It was super tough. And after that, that's when, they made that comment. They're like, yeah, he's a good player, all this, watch a few more games. But as a winger at this level for U14, maybe gonna have to move to a left back. And so it was devastating. I'm not gonna lie. It was definitely hard to hear. But like I said, with a really good support system, I was able to look at it to the fact that, like, I'm trying to be on the field. So if the national team wants me on the field as a left back, then I'm going to do that straight up. It's not about, where I want to play. It's where I can play. And so that's the mindset that I had. So after that, it's just been kind of straightforward from there.
Nice. I like that attitude of, I'm going to be on this pitch by any means possible. It's great. And we also, like, we made a video about this the other day on Train Effective, how, you had someone like Camavinga, who right now is at Real Madrid. He was a striker. He's now a central midfielder. He's also played at left back for Real Madrid. Van Dijk growing up was playing as a striker, and now he's a defender. And so, like you say, you have to be adaptable, and you have to be have enough humility to understand that, okay, I need to sort of do at times what my team might need me to do. So yeah, that's good to hear. So after Charlotte Academy, then you end up at Clemson University, where you play for the Clemson Tigers. in D1. How did that come about? And, what was your thought process through making that decision to attend Clemson University?
Yeah, so I kind of touched on this a little bit before, but I went to their ID camp in the summer, and the way that their ID camp works is it's like a summer camp, but it's also kind of like a trial at the same time. I was there for 5 days, 4 nights, and you just do a bunch of training sessions in the morning, and then at night are the 11v11 matches. And so in those matches, the top players who play well will get selected for the All-Star game, which is the best players out of the entire camp. And that all-star team will play against the active Clemson soccer team. So it's like the best campers versus the Clemson team. And in that all-star game, that's where all the Clemson coaches and the scouts will watch you play versus their active players. So it's a great opportunity because, they're literally watching you in person play against their team. And so that's what happened to me. I ended up getting selected for the all-star game, played very well. The coaches, came up to me and said that they really liked the way that I played, and so they ended up getting me on a visit. And I'm from South Carolina. Clemson's in South Carolina. I wanted to go to Clemson for a while now, and they happen to be a very top program in America. So it all kind of made sense. It all kind of fit together. So when they offered me, I was still very young. I was a sophomore, but I was like, I don't want to go anywhere else. It's in South Carolina. It's close to home. It's a top program. I love the coaches, the campus, everything. So I committed pretty early. So
Nice. So it all kind of worked out in terms of where you wanted to go, the location, and the program was good, like you say. So you then you go into your first year there, and perhaps it wasn't, and it didn't maybe go exactly as you had planned in your head. Maybe it was a bit more difficult than you had expected. So yeah, like talk me through that, and how difficult was it for you to really make that breakthrough and get into the first team?
yeah, it was extremely difficult. That season was probably one of the most difficult seasons in my whole footballing career, mainly because it was just a way bigger jump than anything that I experienced. I said before how I made that jump from, discoveries to Charlotte Soccer Academy, but this jump from academy to D1, it was huge, especially at Clemson, because Clemson is, a top program. And I remember I came in and, the mindset of every freshman, is like, I'm going to come in, I'm going to take his spot, I want to play, I'm going to be, freshman of the year, all this and that. And there's a lot of other things that go into it, especially when going to university. You got school, you're leaving your family, in terms of, soccer and stuff like that. Sometimes things don't go your way. So it's about balancing everything at the same time. And sometimes everything just doesn't go to plan. So I remember my preseason, I was playing very well in preseason. And, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to get, I'm going to take the starting left back spot. I'm going to come in, I'm going to do this and that. And I remember my first game that I got in, I was so nervous. I was so nervous. It's the most fans I played in my whole life. I think it was like 5,000 fans at the game. I was just like, wow. I was nervous. I missed one pass. And then, everyone's like, come on, come on. And I'm like, okay, like I got to get right. Then I missed another pass. And I'm like, oh, man, I just keep going in a hole. And it was bad. And I ended up getting yanked out of the game. And that whole season, it was more just up here. From a mental and a confidence perspective, I was so low on confidence. I was so scared to make a mistake. Mentally, I just wasn't extremely strong. I was trying to balance my schooling, also my football, but then at the same time also have some type of a social life as well. And it was just extremely tough because I knew that I had the quality. I knew that I was a quality player, but I wasn't playing the way that I wanted to. So it was extremely frustrating. And going back home, it was COVID actually that ended the freshman season early. That kind of hit a reset on everything for me to return my sophomore year.
So touching back on some of the things you mentioned there, did you have any sort of methods where, like you say, mentally it was really tough, right? So what did you, for yourself, was there any ways of which you tried to tackle that problem of the sort of the mental side of thing, the confidence and sort of feeling anxious on the pitch? How did you try to address that?
Yeah, see, and that's the funny thing. I think that's the main problem, because I didn't really do enough to try and attack that. I tried to do it all on my own, and I felt like it's gonna get better if I keep working, But when you get to the higher levels, it's extremely important that you're actively working on your mental game. Just waking up a new day and saying that you're gonna do better. Sometimes that's not enough, especially at a high level. And I just didn't think I did enough in general. I was kind of doing just a level. I was showing up, I was training hard. I was training to compete, but I wasn't really training to dominate. And in terms of the other things in my life, the nutrition, in the gym, working on my mobility and everything was just kind of here. My mental side of the game, I wasn't really doing extra to get to where I wanted to go. And so after when COVID hit and ended my freshman year early, I ended up getting a mentor and to help me with that stuff. And that's when I realized, I was like, if I want to be able to be a star for Clemson, I want to be playing on Friday nights in front of 6,000 fans. I got to do a lot more than I'm doing right now. And that's kind of when it all changed.
Nice. And so even in that first year, so you briefly mentioned it there, but the sort of the social life, balancing the social life as well as trying to play soccer correctly and train correctly. How did you deal with that in terms of both balancing that? So did you have friends who were going out and you couldn't go out and you had to sacrifice that? But then also, what was it like balancing the life of trying to pursue soccer, but also you're in a new environment, new people, you're living by yourself now, away from your family? How did you find that balance, and what did you do to try to cope with that?
Yeah, I definitely did have friends, on the outside who were going out and doing things, and I had to sacrifice that, to focus on my football and my school. And I remember I didn't really start hanging out with, some of my outside friends until like November when the season was over. I didn't really have many extra friends. I mean, there were people that I knew there because I was from South Carolina, but and it was just all soccer in school pretty much. And it was definitely tough, especially because I came from high school being like a straight A student, and I remember I get into college and I take my first psychology test, and I get a 70, and I'm like, whoa, like what's going on here? Like, I'm a straight A student, what's going on? So even school, was kind of taking a toll because I'm trying to focus on a bunch of other things. I ended out with good grades, but still, it's definitely a huge adjustment. Just trying to balance everything and being away from home. Being away from home wasn't too tough for me, like I said before, because I'm not too far away and my parents could come to all the games. And we lived in an apartment with 3 other guys on the team, so it's nice being around the guys a lot. So that wasn't too tough, but balancing all 3 at the same time as a freshman is definitely pretty tough if you're not locked in.
Bro, listen, I also studied psychology and I can vouch it's sometimes not easy, man. So don't be too hard on yourself with the 70 that you got. So you then said obviously between your first year and your second year, you started working with a mentor and that really helped you get on the right path. Was it around then that, say, did you start doing a lot more individual training away from the team training to really work on yourself that bit more to break through?
Yeah, I did a ton of individual training, and I think COVID helped out a lot, because, like I said before, that made me realize that I just wasn't doing enough. And talking to my mentor, he helped me a lot with the mental and psychological side of the game. And then I remember every single day during quarantine, I was training every single day with a few of my other mates in Charlotte. I was running every single day. I was doing, workouts, to build my strength. And I was just working on myself and, doing everything I could to develop and really break into that first team, because I knew that was extremely important.
And then so when you do sort of, you're breaking into the team now, into your second year, yeah, like talk me through that year for you. How was that in comparison to your first year breaking into the team?
Yeah, so my second season, come off of quarantine and COVID and things like that. I've been working so hard. I had my mentor, but at the same time, I still didn't fully break into the team yet. So, like I said, to all other footballers, you might be putting in, all this work. Sometimes it doesn't happen right away. I still had to be patient, even though I had a different mindset and I was a better player. So I come back my sophomore year and I still wasn't starting, but I was getting a lot of minutes. So I would come in. I was one of the first substitutes off the bench coming into the game. So definitely a lot better than freshman year than not playing at all. One of the first subs off the bench coming in, putting in a really good shift. And I could see my play really starting to develop. The coach started to trust me a lot more and put me in those bigger, ACC championship games, tournament championship games. And that sophomore season, I saw a ton of growth because I knew that I hadn't fully, received the fruits of my labor yet, but I could slowly start to see it coming because of my persistence in my work. And so after that first season of my sophomore year, that's when the blessings really started coming in. Because, as I mentioned before, I came into Clemson as a left back. I don't know if I mentioned that before. That's what they recruited me as. But I would also feature in the games as a winger because coach still saw those qualities in me, like my pace, my 1v1s and, ability to finish. After my first season, sophomore year, both of our wingers leave to go pro. So Kamarni Smith, he's actually from England. He played at Nottingham Forest, and he went pro to DC United. And then Grayson Barber, he signed early homegrown to Sporting Kansas City. So a lot of people didn't know he was going to sign homegrown. So we lost both of our starting wingers. And so coming back January, we had another season because of COVID, and he was like, we're gonna try you at left wing. And so because I've been preparing and, doing all this individual training and working on my mental, I was ready mentally to receive, that opportunity. And my first game of the spring season, I got a goal and an assist in my first start at left winger. And from then on, it was just, continual improvement.
Nice. And I think there's two very valuable lessons there for any sort of younger aspiring footballers that we have listening. I think firstly, in that, you were consistent for a very, very long time before you really started to feel the difference and for the good to come out of it. It wasn't just a matter of a month or two, it was several months, it was years. And I think that's one great takeaway from that. Another is if you are on the bench and if you're not starting, don't drop your shoulders, don't feel for yourself, just sort of get on with it. And when you do get that opportunity to come on, like you say, you're one of the first off the bench, then really take it and really go for it. So then, you say the two sort of main left wingers leave. What was it like when the coach said to you, we're going to try you out at left wing? Was there a real sense of excitement to sort of go back to a position where perhaps as when you were younger, that's the position you really wanted to play? Were you really excited, or was there nerves as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a little bit of nerves, but it was mainly excitement. Because like I said before, left back is a position, or anywhere in the defense, those are positions where you usually don't sub in games, to be honest. But up top, that's where, in the midfield, those are where most of the subs happen. And so, like I said before, the coach saw my quality, so he wanted to get me on the field. So that sophomore season, when I wasn't getting, game time at left back, he would put me up at left wing. So it wasn't completely foreign to play left wing at the college level, but, finally getting that start and, him saying that, you're going to be the left winger, in the first team, I was definitely extremely excited. And I definitely got those feelings that I felt when I was a young kid, scoring goals, taking people on and stuff like that. So I definitely got that feeling back.
Nice. So then, would you say that it was your junior year where you really started to kick on, doing really well, starting for the team and being like a star player for your side?
Yeah, I definitely think junior year was when it all kind of happened. I guess it was kind of my breakout year. Coming from my sophomore year, the second season, like I said before, that's kind of when I came into the position. But like I said, it didn't really pop off for me. And so that summer, right before my junior year, I was like, okay, I'm in the team. I've acclimated myself. I know the level. Now it's time to dominate. My sophomore year is more about competing and, trying to win. But this junior year is about domination. There's no more excuses anymore. And that's when everything kind of turned up. I was the top goal scorer of the team. Scored 2 goals in the national championship game, and it, just kind of like a fairy tale that junior year.
I love that. I love that. And so, would you say that around that time, when you were in the junior team, like you say, you were kicking on, you were scoring goals, was it then that for you it kicked in, right? I can go pro here. Like I can really make something big out of this. Is that when it kicked in for you, or was it before or after? When did that realization come to you?
So the realization, it became more apparent my junior year when I started, scoring goals, and MLS coaches were actually actively, looking at me and saying stuff to my coaches. But I think during COVID, when I was grinding and I was training, that's when I made the decision that I wanted to go pro. My freshman year, like I said before, it was so tough. The left back who was in front of me, he's now pro as well too, but he was only a year older than me, Charlie Asensio. And so I'm like, I'm not going to play left back until my senior year. I was like, you know what? I might as well just get my degree. I don't think pro is going to be for me. Nothing's working out for me. I had so many doubts in my head. And then once COVID hit, I was like, what am I thinking? I've been playing this game since I was 2 years old. My parents have put so much time and energy into me. My brothers helped me out so much just for me to throw in the towel, just when things get tough. And so during that COVID season, I was training and working as if I was going to go pro. I was going to make it happen. Simple as that. And then so my junior year, when I started seeing the benefits, I was like, okay, that's it. I'm going pro. I'm not doing anything else. So,
Bro, that's super motivating to hear, man. I love that. So you say you feel like that in your junior year, then going into your senior year, I presume you must have felt super confident, feeling really good about your football. I believe you were elected to be captain around that time as well, I think. Am I right? Yeah, so you're also captain, but then you get hit with a very unlucky injury, which you needed to have surgery for. Talk me through that. What was that like? And yeah, how are you feeling about that?
Yeah, that was extremely tough. And I think my senior year, in some ways, was even tougher than my freshman year as a season, because I was elected captain of the team, and that was such an honor because I'd given so much to that program. We just won a national championship with them, and being elected captain of the team, it was a huge honor, and I definitely took that on. But then having to get that surgery in April, it was so tough because that senior year, that's the year right before you get drafted and before MLS scouts are, constantly looking at you. And so I remember coming back, and I was not 100% healthy for the season. I just wasn't. I was healthy enough to play, but like I said before, I wasn't healthy enough to play to my ability and dominate. And that season was so tough because I had the sport hernia surgery. I wasn't able to move and make plays the way that I wanted to. And then when I actually started feeling better during like kind of the early middle part of the season, in a game versus Presbyterian, I think I jump up for a header, and our big striker, he's like 6'5", but he's huge. He lands on top of my knee, and I ended up bruising the side of my MCL. So then I had another injury that season as well. And so it's like, I come back, I'm finally starting to play good. Then I get another injury. I couldn't even play in like the middle part of the games. And it's so tough as a captain that, you like to be verbal and stuff, but I like to lead by example on the field, what doing the field. So I can't even play in games. I'm getting put into games for 10 minutes and 7 minutes. And it's just like, I almost felt helpless at one point. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to go pro. I remember I thought about it. I was like, the agents that had contacted me in the summer before my senior season, there was like 3 agents that contacted me. They weren't really talking to me as much during the season. I only had like 2 or 3 goals as a forward, which isn't a good standard for, going to the professional level. I had all these injuries. I wasn't playing. And I was like, I think I'm going to have to stay for a 5th year in college. I don't think I'm going to be able to go pro. And I was so upset. I was so mad. It seemed like nothing was going my way again. I had done all that work up for my freshman year, junior year, had the season of my life, just for the season right before the draft to not be able, to play the way I wanted to. And it was so tough. But then again, I had to stay persistent. And so I ended up getting healthy at the end of the season. I started playing very well again. And then I was ended up getting blessed with the opportunity to go to the MLS College Combine. And so for the people who don't know what that is, basically they take the top college players in the nation and they put them all in this one combine where you train and you play in front of all the MLS scouts. So there's a scout from every single MLS team, and they watch you play in 11v11 games. And I played there as a left back. So I moved back to the position before, and I played very well there. And then from then on, I ended up getting drafted. So it ended up working out in the end, but that senior season was definitely extremely tough.
Bro, I can for sure see why your last year, like you said, was more difficult than your first, because at least the first it was like, okay, I'm not getting in, but I have 3 more years to improve, to keep working. And once I get in, hopefully by the last year I can get there. But the fact that you were there, you were confident, you were one of, if not the best player on your team, and it sort of just gets taken away from you because injuries are really tough. Even like at the top of the game, for the best players, injuries mentally takes on you. So I actually wanted to ask about that as well. So all players generally have their own ways of coping with injuries and coping through the period where they can't play. How did you deal with it? Do you have any sort of tips and tricks that you went by to help you get through that time?
Yeah. So I think my senior year is when I grew up an extremely religious person. But I think my senior year is when I really started to reconnect my faith with Jesus Christ, because, that was an extremely tough time. And I feel like I needed him, but I wanted to have a relationship with him just more than when things are going bad, even when things are going well. So I remember I really started to tap in more to my faith. I started to confide in my parents a lot more, and talk to my mentor. Having a mentor was so key for me in those tough moments. It's just really nice being able to have someone who played at a high level. My mentor, he played college ball as well, and talking to other mentors who play professionally, hearing from them and getting insight from them, it just makes you feel so much better from a mental standpoint. Hearing from someone, encourage you and push you on. And then at the same time, it's about having things outside of the game. Having the game just alone, it can't be your only source of happiness, because when that gets taken away, what is there? And so I found a lot of my happiness and a lot of my motivation and, my faith in Jesus Christ, talking to my parents and my mentor, hanging out with my friends and, just enjoying the game. And so that brought a lot of motivation back. I remember I would watch like old Messi highlights, from 2010, and watching Cristiano Ronaldo at Manchester United, watching those things that made me fall in love with the game, when I was so young, keeping that motivation and keeping myself remembering why I'm doing this, that really helped me to stay in it.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. That's amazing to hear. So yeah, and you know what? We had another guest on here, Sahil, who he was telling us about how Thiago Alcantara, Liverpool player, went to their camp, and he's a big pro player, played at Barcelona, Bayern Munich, and he said that one thing that was really important throughout his journey was having hobbies outside of football. Like you just said there, when that gets taken away from you, that can't be all your happiness, that can't be all you look forward to doing gone. You have to have outside things, and it's good to hear, like you say, you had yours. So you then, like you say, thankfully you kicked on towards the end of the season. You were scoring goals again, and you were feeling a bit better towards the end of the season. So you get invited to the MLS Combine. How was that for you? Like mentally, when did you first hear about it? And what were you feeling like going into the game, knowing there's all these scouts watching, and one of these scouts could be the way, or your way of getting to pro football, soccer even?
Yeah, so it was honestly amazing, because like I said before, I went from thinking that I was not going to be able to go pro and have to stay for a fifth year to getting that call up into the combine. And so I remember I was talking to one of my mentors, and he was like, "Yo, like, I think you're going to get into the combine. Stay ready. I know you might have not had the season that you think you wanted to, but look, at the end of the day, they've seen what you've done your junior year. They know you're a quality player, and they really want to get you into this combine as a left back." So it was kind of funny, because it was a little bit of the same thing that I had before with the national team, because in the national championship I played the 9, And so a lot of scouts, they saw me play the 9 in the championship. I'm not a number 9. I only played that because both of our number 9s tore their ACLs right before the championship game. So I had to play that position. And so, my mentor's like, you're probably going to be going in as a left back. But all the scouts thought you were a striker. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm not a striker at all. So when I got that call up, it was more like mentally, I was like, okay, here we go. Like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to show them what I'm about. This season might have not been, what I wanted it to be, but now it's about, taking this opportunity and going in there and honestly just showing levels and showing what I'm about. So.
Well, again, goes back to the same thing about adaptability. Like you say, you filled in at striker because the players weren't there like that. So talk me through again. So you go to the combine and you play there, and the scouts are there and they're impressed. What is the process like for those who may not know as well? What is the process like from when you play the game to when you get drafted? Talk me through that. When do you learn about where you could be potentially drafted to? Yeah, talk me through that.
Yeah, so it's a little more complicated. So from the combine, I think there was about 44 players there. And so after you play your games at night, there's interviews. So they'll schedule interviews with different MLS teams. And so I remember after my first game, I played well. I ended up having like 4 or 5 interviews with different MLS clubs at the hotel. So they have like a conference room where you go into the MLS team and you talk to like 2 or 3 of their coaches, and you pretty much have an interview. They ask you about, who you are as a person, what you're going to bring to their team, all this and that, and you basically interview with them. And then I remember, then you play another game. I played the second game, then I had like 3 or 4 more interviews. So I had interviewed by the end of the time with about 9 or 10 MLS clubs. So I was definitely excited about that, just because I piqued the interest of so many clubs after my performances in the 11v11. So it's nice because after you play the games, you kind of have an idea of who might want to select you based on who you get an interview with and who you talk to from that. But then also as well, this is when it gets complicated. There's Generation Adidas contracts. So if you're not a senior and you're like a junior, sophomore, freshman, you're an underclassman, you have the ability to get a Generation Adidas contract. And that is a contract from Adidas through the MLS. It's a guaranteed 2-year contract to the best young college players to get a guaranteed contract to that team. Since I was a senior, I couldn't get one, but then you have the GAs who also go into the draft as well. So they're considered free players, so they'll be in the draft as well. So sometimes it gets tricky because you might not know where you're going to go, because teams are going to take a GA player before anyone else, usually because it's a free player to their club and it's a guaranteed Adidas contract. But after the combine, pretty much you kind of just wait around. First, they announced the Generation Adidas players. They announced 11 this year. One of my teammates from Clemson, 2 of my teammates got 2 GA contracts at 11, so that was good for them. And then they released the draft eligible list. So after the GA list, they announced the list of all the people who are eligible for the draft. So that's pretty much every senior and every 5th-year player. They announced that list, and then it's pretty much kind of waiting around. Some MLS clubs can contact you in between then. I remember 2 MLS clubs contacted me after the combine as well, just to have an interview with me and check in. But yeah, and then it's pretty much you're just waiting around and seeing what's going to happen. So yeah.
So I'm quite interested by the interviews actually. So you say after the game they invite you for interviews. What do they ask you generally?
Yeah, so they'll first ask you about kind of like icebreaker questions. It starts off pretty chill, so it's kind of like, when did you start playing? How was your time at Clemson? All that type of stuff, and then it starts getting into more stuff about the club. So then it's like, what are your best qualities? What do you think you can work on? What are you going to bring to this club? If I were to ask somebody else on your team what they would say about you as a player, what would they say about you? And then they would be like, so, I'm listed as a left back. And they're like, but you play left winger. So are you versatile? What position do you prefer more? This and that. And then they're like, what do you know about, for example, what do you know about Real Salt Lake? Do you know anything about the club? Do you know our style of play? Things like that. And so they kind of start off, easy, working into it. And then they start to find out more so who you are as a person. Because you're at the combine because you're a good player. They know you're a good player, but they want to know who you are as a person before they really bring you into their organization and kind of what they're going to work with. So, yeah, it's more like that. It starts off, kind of easy, and then they ask like some really, really tough questions they got to give some thought to.
So it's a proper like evaluation of you as a player, as a person, and you know what? That's another little a lesson for our listeners to take away as well. I think I'm a little bit of like a football transfer nerd. I keep all, I listen to all the news about transfers, and something that I pick up a lot is that a lot of managers, a lot of the top quality managers, you're talking your Pep Guardiolas, your Klopps, your Eric Ten Hags, etc., etc. A lot of what they want to see in a player is about their characteristics, is about their personality, is about their mentality. So that is as important to a manager or a coach than it is your sort of technical ability or physical capabilities. Yeah, like the mental side is just as important. Like you said, that's why they were asking you that those kind of questions. So you then obviously you're eventually going to hear back from Houston Dynamo. How do you find out? Was it a call? Did someone else? Did the agent tell you? What was that like?
Yeah, so it was weird because so in the draft they televise it pretty much, or they'll have a stream on YouTube, and so it's kind of like a pretty American thing, kind of like the NFL and NBA draft. So like with the first pick of the draft in the first round, Charlotte FC selects, and then they'll select a player. They'll have like the video camera. So that's usually what most of the GA players get. They'll usually be like the top 10 players. They'll have like the video camera, the celebrations in the house and stuff like that. And so for the first round, it's all televised. It's streamed on YouTube. And so I thought I was going to be first round. I'm talking to my agent, and before the draft, he's like, we're going to be first round. And so I was like, oh, sweet, first round. It's a big deal, all this and that. And then I ended up not getting drafted first round. And so I was like, okay, like what's going on here? He's like, relax, you're gonna get drafted. He's like, it doesn't really matter about where you get drafted. It's just about, in terms of like the number, like the round, but it's about like the club that you go to. And so I remember the second round is not televised. It's just on a live website page. So the names just start getting put down on the website. And I remember I was just kind of sitting there on the couch, like beside my mom, my girlfriend, and I was just sitting there. And then my brother was like, Isiah Reid. And I was like, what? He's like, Isiah Reid to Houston. And everyone just started screaming. It was crazy. It was an amazing feeling. But yeah.
Bro, that sounds like an amazing moment. And it's even better the fact that you say your brother was there, your girlfriend was there, your mum was there. So you got to share this amazing memory with your loved ones. So that's So bro, huge congratulations. It's amazing to hear the journey and how you've got to where you are now. So yeah, talk me through so you're in your first season now with Dynamo. How has that been going for you so far?
Yeah, I think it's been going pretty well so far. Definitely a little bit of an adjustment. Like going into my first rookie preseason, it's definitely an adjustment because it's like you go from the D1 level, which is a high level, especially at Clemson, but then you're going to a professional environment. And my first day of preseason, I'm in training with Hector Herrera, who is the captain of the Mexican national team. So it's like and other top pro players. So it's a lot different than just playing in college. And I remember my first day was like a fitness test, and that was fine, and we did some passing patterns. But the thing about at the pro level, especially when I'm in with the first team, is more so it's like up here again. It's all mental because it's about staying switched on for 2 hours or however long training is. Because in college, not that you can switch off, but the level, obviously, playing with college players and playing with Hector Herrera is completely different. So, at the pro level, every coach is watching your every move, your body language, your first touch, your pass. So it's about being completely locked in for 2 hours and being able to have the mental capacity to do that. And so that was something that I did need to adjust to, probably like my first couple days, just really getting up to speed with the speed of play. Like I said before, like players are just fizzing the ball in. You got to have a clean first touch. I remember a few of my touches that they bobbled up on me a little bit, but I mean, I was just like, it's going to get better. So acclimated to that. And, now I'm enjoying it. I'm with the reserves. I'm with the second team right now where I'm getting active game time, which I think is extremely important. For the people who don't know the league about that, so there's the MLS, which in terms of like the scheme, it's kind of like the Premier League. So it's the top league in America. And then the league that I'm in right now is the U23 league. So like Premier League 2. So it's pretty much like the second team of every first team, and you play in the league. And it's a good way for, young players to get game time experience who wouldn't be in the Premier League or who wouldn't be in the MLS. And so that's where I'm playing right now with Houston 2, Houston second team, and I'm enjoying it right now. In terms of the organization, the first team and the second team are both in-house. We're all together. Some weeks I'll get to train up with the first team, and so the opportunities to get that first team call up are very often. So it's a really good organization for me to develop. So I'm enjoying it right now.
Amazing. And so, you said you obviously it's very different from training at college compared to now you're at a big professional club. Would you say that sort of or what would you say has there been anything which you've noticed from the people that you now play with and train with, the professional players? Are there habits which they have which perhaps the players at college level didn't have? Are there things which they do which the college players didn't? And have you changed your habits or your routine since joining Houston?
Yeah, I think something that I've noticed in with the first team is, well, just in general, there's a huge time before they get to the facility and when they train. So that's something that you usually don't have in college. Usually in college, you would get to locker room time would be 30 minutes before training, or if you get treatment, it would be an hour to an hour and a half before training, especially when you train in the morning. For here, locker room time is 8:30, and training isn't until 10 or sometimes 10:30. So you have a long hour and a half to be able to, get your prehab, get your treatment. Some people like to meditate or play tech ball or get some touches before training. So they even have structured time in between the time when you get there and you train for you to be ready for training. For me, like I said before, I'm always looking to innovate, whether I'm, at the bottom or I'm looking to innovate from a position of strength. And so I've even upped my habits. I like to think that, even though I'm a professional player, in terms of me as a person, I'm a pretty professional person. So in the mornings, I like to take care of my body. When I wake up, I read the Bible, I meditate, I get in a proper breakfast, and then I do, a prehab, get a little bit of treatment, get some touches before training, this and that, just making sure that my mind is right for training. So I've definitely increased some of the stuff that I was even doing at Clemson for the professional level.
Nice. And so going forward now from this point where you are now, what would you say are some of your short-term and your long-term goals looking into the future?
Short-term goals, I would say they're more process-based. For me, when I do my goal setting, short-term and long-term, I focus more on the process because I focus on things that are more so in my control. So I have goals for the season that can be measurable in terms of, my chance creation, where I can get the goals and assists from. I don't have a number for goals and assists because sometimes that's out of my control, but I have different numbers that if I have 50 penalty area entries for the year, then I know that can increase my chances of, scoring goals because that is something that's in my control. So it's more short-term goals that are along the process, getting 8+ hours of sleep, daily film, journaling, and meditation so that I can continue to improve as a player off the pitch. And then more of my on the field goals, like I said before, they're more process-based, things that can get me in the position to reach those goals that everyone has. Because at the end of the day, everyone wants a first team contract. Everyone wants to be, playing in MLS or whatever first division league they're in. That's obviously everyone's goal. But at the end of the day, when I'm goal setting from a mental perspective, I want to make sure it's focused on the process, because if I don't get that first team contract, does that mean that my season's a failure, even though that I did everything else in the process right? No, that just might mean that God doesn't, that's not in God's plans for me that year. Just the same thing at Clemson. So when I make my goals, it's just about the process. And then in terms of my long-term goals, it's honestly just maximizing my full potential. That's pretty much the main goal for me, to maximize my full potential, because I know that if I maximize my full potential, the byproduct of that, I believe, is that I am going to be in the first team. I am going to be in the first division. And so that's something that's in my control, just being the best that I can be and being able to inspire people along the way through my journey while I do maximize my potential.
No, that's amazing to hear. I think what you said there is spot on in terms of like your goals are tailored towards what is in your control, because if your goals are set on things which you can't control, then you'll end up mentally beating yourself up because you can't reach those things, but they're not your fault and you're doing everything you can do and everything correctly to get to where you need to. And I think that's great. I also actually wanted to ask about social media. So I've seen on TikTok that you have like 80K followers, and you create content on there. Like what is it about sort of creating content which you enjoy? Is that something which is like a hobby of yours outside of the game, and does it help you at all with your game at all?
Yeah, so I actually studied sports communications at Clemson, and I interned as a social media content strategist while I was at Clemson. So definitely, content making is a hobby of mine, but it's also a passion of mine, because I've always had a passion for wanting to help others. I love being able to help out other people, and me having a platform. As I mentioned before on my TikTok, my three main purposes for my TikTok is to entertain, to inspire, and to connect. And I remember growing up, I saw a bunch of other YouTube pages like F2 freestylers, and watching the Sidemen and other people. And I haven't really seen as much of that in the football community on social media. So I want to be able to use my platform as a place where all footballers can come to either get a laugh and make them smile, to be inspired by my journey, or just to connect with a professional footballer. It's not very often that people can have access to a professional footballer where they're actively giving them tips and stuff to be able to get better. And so coaching and mentoring is something that is a passion of mine as well. So that's why I love my platform, because I get to be able to do that in my free time. And in terms of it helping me as well, I think it helps me because when I make these videos about, having a strong mentality and, things to do as a footballer, that motivates me as well, because I'm making a video. So when I'm making motivational videos, I'm looking at it, I'm like, I'm going to do this as well. When I'm giving these young footballers information on, you need to watch film and watch it with a critical eye, I'm taking that information as well. I'm doing everything that I'm telling all these people in my social media. So it almost kind of keeps me in check too as well, because I'm developing and I'm growing as I'm helping other people develop and grow. So it was pretty cool.
No, I think you're spot on. I even remember like when I was in high school, my teachers used to say to me, one of the best ways to learn is to teach. So if you can learn a topic and then try to teach your friend that topic, you'll learn it a lot better than you just trying to learn it yourself. And that's basically what you're doing, because you're teaching and you're giving out these methods, and so you're taking it in more than you may even know. So yeah, no, I think that's an absolutely like brilliant perspective on social media from a footballer, especially because you say you like to connect, and that's great to hear as well. So I'll end it on one of the last big question I have for you today. So if you could give one piece of advice to a young star, whether that be in the US or anywhere else in the world, they're trying to go pro, what would it be from you?
I think if I give one piece of advice, it would be to not be afraid to see how good you can be. That is the best advice I can give, because in that you will find out that you're going to try and do everything that you can to reach your full potential. The scariest thing as a footballer or as an athlete in general is knowing that you do everything you can. You're eating properly, you're lifting, you're training every single day, you're watching film. You do everything you can in your power, and you still might not be good enough. That is one of the biggest fears in so many athletes. But the thing is, if you want to be able to reach the professional level, you got to take risk, and you can't be afraid of failure. You can't. You have to be afraid of the regret that you have when you don't put everything you can into it. So it's about running your own race, doing everything you can in your power to make sure that you can reach that level. I'm going to challenge every young footballer watching this right now. Whatever you're doing right now is not enough. And that's not as a critic, but that's me challenging to see how much more you can do. I thought when I was a freshman at Clemson, I was doing enough, but I wasn't. I thought that even when I became a pro, I was doing enough, but I had to increase even more. If you guys want to be able to reach the next level, you cannot be afraid to fail, and you cannot be afraid to see how good you can be. So I challenge you guys to just put your all into this, okay? You have one footballing career, so you got to make the most of it. Don't sit around being afraid of failure. Go ahead and attack it head on. Don't worry about anyone else's journey. Like I said before, you might put in all this work, and it might not come in a year. It might not come in 2 years, but on that third year, all those benefits from that consistent work you've been putting in is going to pay off. So the overarching, thing is just not be afraid to see how good you can be, go in full, and just see where it's going to take you.
No, that's amazing. And listen, guys, that's the challenge set there, challenging you to become the best version of yourself. And that's I think that's a great note to end the podcast on. Isiah, listen, you've been absolutely amazing. I know that everything you've been saying today is super motivational and super inspiring for our listeners. So thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Of course, thank you. So listen, guys, if you haven't already, check out Isiah's socials, which will be in the description below. If you haven't already as well, go check out our socials, which will be below. If you're on YouTube, make sure to click the like and subscribe. And if you're on Spotify, follow for more content as well. Until next time, thank you for watching.